Marie Osmond, one of the most loved and beautiful stars in America, had a voice so sweet and clear that it made the whole country feel warm and safe. From her sad and pretty song, Paper Roses, to the bright stage lights of the Donnie and Marie show, her voice got stuck in people's hearts forever. She was known for being graceful, in control, and so close to perfect that no one thought she could ever fall apart. But behind that picture-perfect image was a life pulled and stretched by what everyone expected from her, worn down, little by little, every year, and pushed to face the kind of pain that no mother should ever have to go through, having to say goodbye to her own dear son. So, how long can someone keep pushing through hard times before a part of them stops feeling whole? And now, at 66, what is it that still holds on and won't let her go? The world looks up to Marie Osmond, but that admiration was built on the one thing she never had: a real childhood. Born on October 13, 1959. As the only girl among 9 kids in the Osmond family, she wasn't just raised, she was molded right from the start into part of a family name built on hard work, talent, and being perfect. By age 3, the stage had already taken the place of a normal life. And in 1962, when she showed up on the Andy Williams Show, a moment most little kids wouldn't even remember, quietly set the rules for her whole life. Expectations, before she could even understand what that word meant. Inside that house, doing great wasn't just encouraged, it was required. Practicing took the place of playing. Doing things just right took the place of being a kid. When she once asked to go outside, her mom's answer stuck with her for the rest of her life: "You don't go out, you have something to finish first." Years later, she would look back and see it clearly. She had been built to show off more than she was ever allowed to just be a little girl. She didn't really grow up, she just adjusted. At 11, what should have been a fun trip to Japan turned into something much more terrible. The boat flipped over. Everything disappeared into water and sky. The salt water burned her eyes. Her skin got blistered under a sun that showed no mercy. Every breath came out shallow and sharp. As she swallowed water, panic came before she could even think. All around her, the ocean went on forever, not caring at all. Time broke apart. Minutes didn't mean anything anymore. And when help finally came, there was no break to figure out what had just been torn apart inside her. She was taken back to the studio, still hurting and raw, like surviving wasn't even enough to earn her a little rest. Years later, she would remember not just the pain, but what she was told after it. Keep smiling, keep singing, keep going. Like stopping was never even possible. That was when something deep inside her started pulling back. Not loudly, not where anyone could see, but with a quiet steadiness that never went away. At 15, stepping into nationwide fame through the Donnie and Marie show, she became one of America's most loved young stars. Millions of people saw warmth, charm, and easy natural grace. But behind the stage lights, things were very different. Then came a demand that went way beyond just how she looked. Lose 10 pounds or risk losing everything. At 103 pounds, it still wasn't enough. That number became like a judgment. Fear and embarrassment did the rest. She pushed herself down to 93 pounds through an extreme plan. Lemon juice, cayenne pepper, maple syrup, a mix designed not to feed her body, but to force it to stay quiet and do what others wanted. Before tapings, she went whole days without eating, dizzy, empty inside, and barely able to stand steady. In dressing room mirrors, the person staring back at her stopped feeling like a real person and became more like a math problem. Each pound meant being accepted. Each pound meant being rejected. By her early 20s, she was fighting anorexia and bulimia. Not because she wanted to rebel, but because it was the only place she still felt like she got to make a choice for herself. They made me feel like I had already failed, and I believed the only way forward was to become smaller, quieter, less of a problem. The struggle was never really just about weight. It was about a belief formed early and heard over and over again, that her worth depended on how perfectly she could meet what was expected. What looked like love rarely stayed that way for Marie Osmond. In the late 1970s, there was Michael McDonald, less like a real relationship, more like a moment where someone truly got her. Then came Andy Gibb, warm and easy to be around, someone she wouldn't forget. What they shared had a sweetness that felt real. But the world around him pushed down too hard and left no room for something fragile to survive. Not long after, David Cassidy came into her life, another person shaped by the same bright spotlight. They recognized each other, but never really belonged to each other. Hope came back in 1982 when she married Steve Craig, not looking for excitement, but for stillness, for something that felt far from the constant pressure of always being watched. At 22, she walked into that life believing she had finally found a place to rest. But by 1985, it was gone. Only a year later, she started over with Brian Blazell, building a life that from the outside looked complete. A marriage that lasted decades, a family of 8 children, a structure that seemed like it finally couldn't be broken. But inside, distance lived in the silence and strain filled the spaces between words. By 2007, after 21 years, that life ended too. Not with drama, just a quiet understanding that something she had carried for years could no longer keep going. In 1999, After the birth of her seventh child, Matthew, the woman the world thought it knew started to drift beyond even her own reach. Energy disappeared into total exhaustion. Her own thoughts started turning against her. Even her own body no longer felt like something she could count on. She later said there were moments when even lifting her arms felt impossible, when her mind no longer felt like a safe place to be. And then one day she just left. No announcement, no plan, just distance. She got in her car and drove mile after mile with nowhere to go, her hands on the wheel like it was the only solid thing left. Somewhere between 1 mile and the next, a thought floated up, wondering whether anyone would notice if she just kept driving forever. She did come back, but not the same. The doctors gave it a name, clinical depression. But naming it didn't make it go away. In 2007, after finishing a hard performance on national TV, she collapsed in front of millions. It was a window into how hard she had been pushing herself long before anyone realized how much weight she had been carrying. Nothing prepares a mother for the moment the world splits in two. For Marie Osmond, that moment came in 2010. She was getting ready to go on stage with her brother, Donnie, when a missed call showed up from her There would not be another. Minutes later, the next call came carrying news that didn't soften no matter how you said it. Michael had fallen from the 8th floor of his Los Angeles apartment. No drugs, no outside trouble, just something on the inside, quiet and too heavy to carry, that had finally reached its limit. She would answer every call after that. None of them were his. He had struggled for years and had told her he would be okay, and she believed him because that's what moms do. Later, a note was found pointing to bullying, to feeling alone, to a pain he had been carrying more quietly than anyone ever knew. What stayed with her was not just the loss, but the space between what he felt and what she could see, and knowing that she had been close and still not close enough. That gap never closed. Days lost their shape. Nights wouldn't end. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just existed inside a grief that didn't rise or fall, but just stayed there. And yet, only days later, she walked back onto the stage. Not because she was strong enough, but because stopping meant facing a stillness she was scared might swallow her whole. In 2022, under the lights of Las Vegas, she dedicated a song to Michael, and halfway through her voice broke, not as part of a show, but out of pure love and remembrance. The whole room went still. Years later, she would say that grief doesn't fade. It just changes its shape, becoming something you carry without ever being able to put down. The years that followed brought more quiet goodbyes. In 2004, her mom Olive passed away, the woman who had been her quiet center and direction. 3 years later, in 2007, her father George was gone too. Then, in 2018, came the passing of a grandchild, felt in ways no words could capture. In 2022, her daughter Jessica lost her husband, Chris Mondak, in a moment that echoed too closely and cracked open places that had never truly healed. Around that same time, her brother Verl suffered a severe stroke. Then, in early 2025, her brother Wayne was gone at 73, a presence woven into her life for decades. Now only memory and echo. At 66 today, Marie Osmond stands as a woman whose life shows a rare balance between being seen and knowing when to step back. Her net worth sits between $10 and $20 million. Built not on one big moment, but on decades of music royalties, television, Las Vegas shows, and smart partnerships. As co-founder of Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, she has helped raise over $5 billion for children's healthcare. Married again to Steve Craig, she lives just outside the spotlight, close enough to step in, far enough to stay herself. What defines her now isn't fame or money, but something quieter. The willingness to keep moving forward without needing everything to make sense again. Because some lives aren't meant to be understood at a single glance, only felt in what they continue to carry.